dear students, myself Gangadhar Solanke, and I welcome you all to the MCGM's virtual classroom.
My dear students, today in Standard 10's Geography, we'll be learning the topic tourism, transport and communication. So in this topic, we are going to talk about the tourism, transport and communication of India and Brazil. Now about tourism, you people already learnt, and we know the importance of transportation in tourism. At the same time, communication is very important, or the facilities of communication play very important role in the tourism of any country. So in this topic, we are going to talk about the tourism, transport and communication. But before that, one thing which you have to do is that on the basis of the things you know about Brazil, make a list of places in Brazil you would like to visit. Now from the first lesson of geography, we are learning about the location and extent of Brazil. In the second lesson, then the physiography and drainage of the Brazil, climate of the Brazil, natural vegetation and wildlife, then the population, human settlements, economy and occupations. Now here, by using all the things which we learnt in all these chapters, you have to make a list of places in Brazil you would like to visit, and which factors or characteristics of Brazil make it a good tourist place. That also you have to mention in that. What types of tourism will be developed here? Discuss with your friends and show the classification. This is what you have to do. Now, the Brazil places you must see are on the screen. And here is the figure 9.1 is given in our textbook, and the heading of this figure is number of international tourists. Number of international tourists of Brazil and India. So by this figure you have to answer the questions. Questions are also given. So the first question is, which country attracted more international tourists in the year 1995? Here is 1995, and you have to answer the question, which country attracted more international tourists in the year 1995. Now you have to see here. यहाँ पर अगर आप बहुत बारीकी से देखेंगे, ऑब्जर्व करेंगे, then you'll get your answer. Then the second one, in which country did more international tourists arrive in the year 2000? Now 2000 is here, and the question is, in which country did more international tourists arrive in the year 2000? Now this one is Brazil and this is India. Again, I am repeating the same thing. By observing the graph, you can answer the question. Third one, in which year can an increase be seen in the number of international tourists in India? In which year can an increase be seen in the number of international tourists in India? Here now you can see from 2010. Then what was the number of international tourists in the year 2015 in both the countries? What was the difference between them here on 2015? What was the number of international tourists in the year 2015 in both the countries? Number क्या था? And what was the difference between them? And the last question based on this figure, what could be the reason of increase in tourists in India after the year 2010? Now here also you have to write down the answers, or you have to guess the answer, of this question, what could be the reason? ऐसे क्या रीज़न हो सकते हैं कि 2010 के बाद इंडिया में इंटरनेशनल टूरिस्ट अट्रैक्शन जो है वो बढ़ गए और वो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा आने लगे. Now we are going to talk about the tourism in Brazil, and when we talk about the Brazil and tourism, then the clean white sand beaches, clean white sand beaches, attractive sea coast, beautiful islands, orchids, deep dense forests of Amazon, various birds and animals attract lots of international tourists here. On the screen you can see the pictures or the images of the tourist attract places of Brazil, and in these on the screen now, deep dense forest of Amazon and the flora and fauna of Brazil. Then the new capital city of Brasilia is also a tourist attraction. Then next to that, cities like Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo are large cities which attract lots of tourists. Just like in India, Mumbai is the city which attract lots of tourists. So the Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro and the Brasilia are the cities which are tourist attractions in Brazil, and the number of reasons are there behind this. Tourism is an important economic activity in several regions in the country. Looking at the sensitivity of the natural resources in Brazil, ecotourism is developing at a faster rate in Brazil. So one thing here which we have to understand is that there is close relation between the tourism and economic activity, or tourism and in the economic development. And for that, in Brazil, because of the sensitivity of the natural resources, ecotourism is developing at a faster rate in Brazil. Now one more figure, 9.2, tourism and economy. What type of graph is shown here? You people already learned about the types of graphs. So first question is all about the type of graph, and you have to write the answer. What type of graph is shown here? What does the graph show? What does the graph show? Graph shows tourism and economy of the year 2016. Which country's tourism has a larger share in the contribution towards GDP? Now here, percentage of population engaged in tourism, this one, percentage of population engaged in tourism, and the contribution of tourism in GDP in red color. Now the question is, which country's tourism has a larger share in the contribution towards GDP? And the answer is Brazil. Which country has a larger population engaged in tourism sector but contributes lesser in GDP? India is the answer of this question. So now, by comparing these two figures, we can conclude the things that, as shown in the figure 9.1, the number of international tourists visiting India in 2015 is here, 2015 is more than that of Brazil. Even though this is true, the share of tourism sector in the GDP is less than that of Brazil. Now go for this one, 9.2. Apart from this, the proportion of Indian population engaged in tourism proportion is higher than Brazil. Again here population engaged is more than the Brazil, but the GDP of Brazil is more. This is primarily dependent on the size of the population of those countries and the size of the GDP. According to this, population of India is more than Brazil and so its GDP. Again I am repeating the sentence. According to this, population of India is more than Brazil and so its GDP. हमारा population ज़्यादा है, GDP ज़्यादा है, इसीलिए ये जो हमें difference दिखाई दे रहा है इन figures में वो है. As the GDP of India is higher than Brazil and so also its population, therefore the contribution of tourism to GDP appears lesser and than Brazil and population engagement seems higher. For example, 100 people we are talking about. Population ज़्यादा होने की वजह से 100 लोग एक पर्टिकुलर टूरिस्ट स्पॉट पे एंगेज है और जो इनकम वहाँ से आ रहा है वो इन 100 लोगों में डिवाइड होगा. एज कंपेयर टू ब्राज़ील 50 लोग हैं, पॉपुलेशन कम होने की वजह से एक पर्टिकुलर टूरिस्ट स्पॉट पे, तो वहाँ पर जो इनकम उनका हो रहा है वो 50 लोगों में डिवाइड होगा. सो नेचुरली जीडीपी जो है वो ब्राज़ील का ज़्यादा दिखेगा देन द इंडिया. Now the next thing, tourism in India. It is seen in figure 9.1 that the number of international tourists in India is constantly growing, but this increase appears to be more after 2010, and this increase in the number of international tourists is consistent, continuously it's increasing. So foreign tourists visit India for what? For heritage or for study of the Indian culture, adventure, cultural, health and business tourism. Ecotourism is also being given boost in India. Now you can divide this into different places, like if you are talking about the heritage tourism, then you can put the spots or the places in that. Then when we are talking about the adventure tourism, then you can also put the spots or the places in that. When we talk about the cultural tourism in India, then the number of film festivals or the festivals of different states. Then the health tourism is also very important when we talk about the tourism in India. Compared to other Asian countries, here in India, the health facility or health services are cheap and better. बाकी देशों से अगर हम तुलना करेंगे तो हमारे यहाँ पे जो हेल्थ फैसिलिटीज़ है वो थोड़ी सस्ती है और अच्छी है, तो इसीलिए बाहर के देशों से बहुत सारे लोग यहाँ पर अपना ट्रीटमेंट करने आते हैं, एंड दैट इज़ कॉल्ड हेल्थ टूरिज्म. Then business tourism, number of meetings and the conferences based on the business. Ecotourism is also being given boost in India nowadays. So considering the heritage of India, there are plenty of opportunities for tourism in many parts of the country. Many places are being developed for this, and whenever we talk about the India, people outside India know Taj Mahal, which is very famous. और लोग जब बाहर से यहाँ आते हैं तो ताजमहल देखना पसंद करते ही करते हैं या फिर ताजमहल देखने जाते ही जाते हैं. सो नंबर ऑफ प्लेसेस आर देयर इन इंडिया एज अ टूरिस्ट अट्रैक्शन और टूरिस्ट प्लेसेस. In this, Taj Mahal is also there, and if we talk about some tourism sites of India, then it includes Agra, Amritsar, Dal House, Dharamshala, Kasulai, Haridwar, Manali, Mathura, and you can add many more in this list. Here also number of images you can see on the screen in the only one image, and you can also recognize the places. So all these are the tourist attractions of India. Then next to this on the screen, Marine Drive of Mumbai, when we talk specially about the Mumbai. Then Gateway of India. Now here Ajanta Caves, monuments at Hampi, Sun Temple at Konark, Manas Wildlife Sanctuary, Fatehpur Sikri, Buddhist monuments, Mahabodhi Temple at Bihar, Agra Fort in Uttar Pradesh, Nalanda University or Takshashila. These are the places which are now in other countries also, but all these places are the tourist attractions. Here now the figure 9.9 about the Brazil major transport routes. So what you have to do, again study the transport map of Brazil in figure 9.3 which is on the screen and answer the following questions. So here this one is the major roads, other roads, railways, capital, tourist places, airport and port. I'll see this with the questions. First one, which means of transport are seen on the map? On the map we can see the transport means major roads, other roads, railways, capital, tourist places, airport, port means airways, waterways and also roadways. Which means of transport has a denser network in the Brazil? Now by observing this index you can answer this question. Which means of transport has a denser network? Which highway can be seen prominently? Which places does it join? So here this one is the highway. What could be the reason of development of railways in the southeast? Here you can see the network of railways in the southeast. In which part of Brazil do you see a lesser development of transport network and what could be the reason? Now by observing this map you discuss it with your friends and try to answer the questions. The most common method of transportation is roadways in Brazil. Roadways account for more than half of transportation. When we talk about the transportation, then the roadways account for more than half of transportation. But the density of road network is concentrated in the eastern part of the country, and the reasons are that the density of road network is concentrated in the eastern part of the country, the forested lands of Amazon River Basin and the swampy lands have limited the development of roadways in this part. That's why. Waterways, next to this. Waterways have been developed on a commercial basis in the Amazon River for the trade purpose. Boats play from Iquitos in Peru to the mouth of the river. The longest waterways in the world can be navigated through these waterways, which is around 3,700 kilometers, which is the biggest in the world. Another river transport which is very important for waterways is the south flowing Parana river. Coastal shipping is also carried out in the coastal areas. So purposes are different, but the facilities are available. Here you can see the Parana river. Next, railways have not developed very well in Brazil. The use of trains for long distance transportation of passengers is restricted to a few urban tourist routes, though it is cheaper, but it is restricted. And when we talk about India, railway is the very important way of transportation. the contribution of airways is less in the transportation system of the country. Here you can see the contribution of airways is less in the transportation system of the country. So, basically one thing which is very important to understand and to keep in mind is that the roadways account for more than half of transportation. Then next to that, waterways, railway is there but which is restricted in the some parts of the country, and the airways which is less in the transportation system of the country. Now the next thing about India transport. Look at the transport maps of India given in figure 9.10 and 9.11. Answer the following questions. Now 9.10 and 9.11. Here on the screen you can see the figure 9.10, India, national highways and major ports. In the figure 9.11 you can see the important railway routes and airports. So the questions are like this: which means of transport are visible on the map? Which means of transport? In the first map, in the figure 9.10 we can see the highways and major ports, means that waterways and roadways, and in the 9.11 railway routes and airways. In which part of India is the density of railways more? Name 5 important ports and airports of India. For this you have to observe the map and then only you can write the names. Which parts of India have a sparse network of transport? What could be the reason? So go through these questions, try to write down the answers, and now here on the screen you can see both the figures, figure 9.10 and figure 9.11. In figure 9.10 you can see Indian national highways and major ports. Here in the figure 9.11, important railway routes and airports. Now in detail we will talk about the India transport. As compared to Brazil, India has a denser network of transport and about 85% of passenger, 85% of passenger and 70% of freight traffic are carried by roads every year. Freight and passenger transport has been facilitated due to the development of the railways. Railways are important for the growth of Indian economy, or we can say that the railway play a very important role in developing the Indian economy because it gives opportunities in the field of business, trade and occupation. Railway network is relatively less dense in the hill states, northeastern states, central parts of India and Rajasthan, while it is dense in the North Indian plains. To understand this in detail, you can refer the figure 9.11. So, in freight movement 65% by road, 27% by rail and 0.5% by waterways. Next, now here you can see railways are important for the growth of Indian economy. Railway network is relatively less dense in the hill states, northeastern states, central parts of India and Rajasthan, while it is dense in the North Indian plains. Railways are very important for a vast country where distances are large. So, whenever we are talking about country like India, एक जगह से दूसरी जगह बहुत दूर तक है, बहुत लंबी है, ऐसे वक्त रेलवे से ट्रैवल करना बहुत ईजी होता है एंड आल्सो इट इज़ चीपर देन द अदर वेज. जैसे मुंबई में अभी बहुत सारे बच्चे ऐसे हैं कि आप किसी और स्टेट से यहाँ मम्मी पापा काम के लिए आए हैं, फिर आप आए, फिर हम पढ़ रहे हैं यहाँ पर सब मिलके, लेकिन जब छुट्टियों में हम हमारे गांव जाना पड़ता है हमें, तो हम रेलवे को ही प्रेफर करते हैं. इंडियन रेलवेज freight traffic, revenue earning freight traffic in million tons. So, here you can see. Now the waterways. Waterways are a cheap means of transport. Waterways contributing about 1% to the country's transportation, only 1%. It comprises rivers, canals, backwaters, creeks and etc. Approximately 95% of India's foreign trade moves through ocean routes. Now again there is the thing which we have to understand, that waterways are a cheap means of transport. Waterways contributing about 1% to the country's transportation. कंट्री के ट्रांसपोर्टेशन को सिर्फ 1% ही वाटरवेज कंट्रीब्यूट करते हैं. बट व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द approximate foreign trade, then 95% of India's foreign trade moves through ocean routes. Apart from international trade, these are also used for the purpose of transportation between the islands and the rest of the country. On the screen you can see these images. So as compared to Brazil, airways in India are more developed and the use of internal airways is also increasing. So as compared to Brazil, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन जो है वो इंडिया में बहुत ही अच्छा है. So in today's topic we learnt about the tourism in Brazil and India and the transportation in Brazil and India. In the next part of this topic we'll talk about the communication in Brazil and communication in India. Please subscribe the channel and press bell icon to get notifications.
So my dear students, this is all for today. Thank you very much. Stay home, stay safe, take care.